G'day. In this series of videos, we're using Psychopy and Python to create an auditory psychophysics experiment. This series has about 10 videos in it already, and so if this is the first video you've stumbled across, I suggest you stop this video, go back to the start of the playlist and work your way forward, because we take our time and we build this program up from scratch, again using Python and Psychopy libraries, as well as some other libraries as well, like pandas, datetime, and some other general libraries. So watch those previous videos, come up to speed, and then join us here. If, however, you've done all that and you want us to get cracking, hey, let's move on. In the end of the last video, we said what we need to do now is get a tally, the count, correct of our subject, because remember, we are doing a psychophysics method where the subject will need to get 2 correct for us to change the stimulus intensity. So as we can see here, we start quite loud. At the start, we're actually using a 1 down, 1 up. But then as soon as they get that first response incorrect, you can see that, all right? We then transfer ourselves into a 2 down, 1 up. So they get the first one correct, they get the second one correct. We then reduce the intensity of the signal down by some amount. They get 1 correct and then 2 correct, all right? We drop the signal intensity down again. And then they get it incorrect. And so every time they get it incorrect, what we have to do is reset the correct counter, and we also have to increase the step size, make the volume louder until they get them correct. When they get it correct for the first time, we have to keep the signal the same intensity, but also we have to update the correct counter. So there's a couple of things else that we need to do now. So this video is going to be a little bit complicated, and I will be looking towards a previous version that I have made before, because there's a couple of things that I have to remind myself of as well. Okay, so bear with us, we will get there together. Now, I also noticed in that previous video that we've got a probe.set volume lurking in there that's going to override some things. So we have to make sure that we only set our volume where we want to set it. So the first thing that we want to do is, whenever the subject gets a correct response, we want to make an updated correct count equals current correct count plus 1. So we're going to need to create a current correct count from the last line of our CSV file. If, however, they get it incorrect, all right, then our updated correct count will equal 0. We're going to reset that to 0. So that's for the first time window. We need to do the same thing for the second time window. So the second time window here will be updated correct count equals 0, because remember, they said that it was in the first, but the subject said it was in the second. So it was in the first, but the subject said it was in the second. And then updated core count equals current correct count plus 1. Okay. So now we're able to increment or make 0 the current correct count. And this will be important for when we go up to the start of our trial and determine, hey, how loud does the sound have to be? So what we need to do now is set our updated correct count here. Good. Let's just see if that's worked. So what we'll do is we'll just run this program. Oops, that was quite loud. So it's now April Fool's, so 1904-01. So again, we're not going to change the intensity of the signal, we're just going to correctly count it. So that was in the second one, so we'll just increase. We'll make it so that the signal will, think Andrew, the count should go up. Okay, so if this has worked, our correct count, updated correct count, should go up because we got them all correct. So as we can see here, we got them all correct. Remember, the observation window and the subject responses are the same, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, or 0, 0. Okay, so we got them all correct, and so therefore the correct count itself is increasing. Good. Let's just do a quick trial now. We'll delete out our sandbox again. So remember, this is the folder where we're saving our files to. All right, so we'll go back up here. We'll get some incorrect now to see if we actually reset the current correct count. So we'll get the first couple correct and then we'll get the next lot incorrect. All right, I'll get the next one wrong. I'll get this one wrong. I'll get this one wrong as well. I'll get the next couple right. Or the next one right. So let's see if that worked. We should have reset the counter a couple of times. So correct, correct, correct. So the counter has cycled up, but then we got this one incorrect, and so the counter has gone back to 0. Correct, correct, correct. 1, 2, 3, great. And then we've got 2 incorrect, and so we reset the counter, and then we got the last one correct, and so therefore the count is going up. Good. So now we are beginning to get a handle on the correct count, and we're able to update the correct count and save that. This is now going to be important because what we're going to need to do now is go up to the top of our loop where we pull out all that information, and we have to start to make, we'll set this down here. So here we go, probe set volume. We have to now put some rules in. And so the rule that we're going to put in right up the top, actually, where we set our variables are, so up here, you have to say, okay, for this experiment, we're going to have number of down equals 2. That means that they have to get 2 correct before we go down in intensity. And then the number of up will equal 1. Okay, great. So here we go. The next thing that we want to do is we want to say, okay, every time they get the 2 correct, we want to drop the intensity down by some amount. So let us make that, we'll call that the down step. And what we're going to do is we're going to make that say 0.01, okay, and the up step. So every time they get it incorrect, 0.01, we will increase not 0.0 exclamation point, we will increase the intensity by the same amount. Now, in some cases, we're going to change this so that the down step does not equal the up step, and so therefore we're actually going to leave these as 2 separate variables here. Okay, we now come down to the top of our main experimental loop. Let's see what I've written here before. Now we get into some complicated rules and conditionals and conditions, because what we have to do is say, okay, if the current experiment trial is less than 0, because remember we initialize our experiment with the -1 trial counter. So therefore, if we are starting this file from the very first time we do it, we want to set this starting value here. Right? So this is what we want to do here, and how do we do that? Well, we've checked to see, is this the starting trial? So what did I say? This will set the initial volume of the probe, and so therefore we'll print a debug statement, and this debug statement is on line 100, and it will say, okay, initial volume set. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to now, remember, updated probe volume. Right, because remember we also want to save in our file output the intensity of the sound that we used, because that's going to go on the y-axis. So updated probe volume equals, let's start this at 0. We'll just start this at 1 actually. So remember, our intensity goes from 0 to 1, so we'll go down and say 0.1 steps. Or up in 0.1 steps. We're going to change this later on because the task is too easy. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the probe volume to updated probe volume. So now by doing this, we've got to set our indents. Now that we've done this, every time we start a new file and the experimental trial is less than 0, because it's going to be -1, that's our initialization, we're going to set it to 1. The probe volume will be set to 1. Okay, great. So the next thing that we need to do now is we have to think about if the current correct count, okay, equals 0. Okay, so that means that we're either starting from the beginning, well, no, actually, if they got the previous one incorrect, because remember we set the current correct count to 0, and if the current experimental trial, okay, so and the current experimental trial, so that's what we're on at the moment, is greater than or equal to 0, so we're not starting at the -1, we've moved on from that. Okay, the updated probe volume will equal current probe volume, right? So you see, we've got the current probe volume here. So I don't know if I put that into the previous video, but if we haven't, you will need to write and extract out the current probe volume, which is current experimental data dot index location. We want the last value, and we want to get it from the intensity column. So you need to put that in there. So what we want to do is they got it incorrect, and so therefore in this particular experiment, every time you get it incorrect, the updated correct count is 0. All right, we want to increase the intensity of the sound, so it'll be current probe volume plus the up step. All right, and then what we're going to do is probe.set volume to the updated probe volume. All right, and we'll print a debug statement here so we know where we are. We're on line 107 of stimulus intensity set to percent, say 3.5F, and we want to put into that the updated probe volume. Now I've started to put the numbers here. 107 means that I'm on line 107. We're going to remove these debug statements later on. Okay, so that's if they got the previous one incorrect. Now, if current correct count, if it's not 0, okay, so it could be 1, so they could have got the previous one incorrect, right? And the current correct, oops, I spelled count wrong, and the current correct count is less than or equal to, all right, the n down, remember that's the number of times that they have to get it correct in a row, so that's the n down. Where were we? N down, okay, and the current EXP. Now I'm overcooking this conditional a little bit, okay, so we might be able to get away without doing this. Trial is greater than 0, so that's making sure that we're not on that 0 trial. All right, so if they haven't got the number correct, all right, so 2 in this case, all right, but they don't have it 0 and they don't have it at 2, and we're further than the first trial, initialization trial, then the updated probe value is going to be the same as the current probe volume. So updated probe volume equals the current probe volume. All right, and we'll set that probe.set volume, and that will be updated probe volume. All right, and then we'll print a debug statement, and this is line 113, and it says stimulus intensity set to percent 3.5F, and that will be updated probe. Okay, good. And so now we have got our last conditional where we say, okay, if current correct count, okay, equals the number of down. So we can actually make that less than the number of down because we've got this here equals the number of down. Okay, so they've got the two correct in a row. So what do we want to do? We actually want to reduce the intensity. So updated probe volume equals current probe volume minus, what is it, down step? Down step, okay. So that first one should be up step because it's going to be louder. This is going to be down step because it's going to be softer. Let me go back here, just on this previous one. Okay, great. And we'll update, so updated, sorry, probe.set volume. Oops. Now, what we need to do is, they've actually got the two correct, and we've made the change to the intensity. So what we need to do in this trial is we need to also reset the current correct count. Because then, what we're going to do is, if they get this trial correct or incorrect, all right, based on here, we're going to do an updated correct count. Okay, so this is an important thing that we need to do. Okay, so Control S for that, we'll save that. So I think that's all we've got there. And then what we need to do is down the bottom here, let's just make sure that we've got updated correct count. Now the intensity is going to be updated probe volume. Right. Let's see if that's worked. Okay, I've got something wrong here. Invalid syntax on line 110. Okay, if current correct count and that, current correct counts and, okay, if current correct count doesn't equal, all right, what have I got not equaling to? This is 0. Ah yes, because if it doesn't equal 0, so if it equals 1, but it's less than 2, then we're going to do that. You could just say if current correct count equals 1, I guess. No, what we're going to do here is going to leave this like this because in the future you might want to do a 3 down 1 up protocol, and so therefore we shouldn't hard code that here. All right. So current intensity set to 1. So that was in that one. So we got that correct. We got that correct. Got that correct. We got that correct. We got that correct. We got that correct. We got that correct. Let's get this one incorrect. Okay. We'll get that one correct. We'll get that one correct. All right. Let's see what we get. Okay. I'll get this up and running. Command E. We'll get the sandbox out. All right. So for trial 0, we got the first one incorrect. Correct. So the intensity here was 1. So we're not setting the intensity correct until some point here. I think, let us try this from the beginning. I think we already had a file that was called that. So let's run this again. So we've got the file now in the background. Good. We get the first one correct. This 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 one correct. We'll get the next one incorrect. Correct. 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 Okay, let's see what we've got. So we started at 1. Okay, that's good. That's what we've set it to. We've got the first 2 correct. So 1, 2. And since we've got the first 2 correct, we then have gone down to 0.9. And that was the step size that we put in there. We then got that correct. We've only got 1 correct, and so it stayed there at 0.9. We got the second one correct. It then dropped down to 0.8, and we've reset the correct counter. We got 8 correct. That's 1. We got that one correct, so that's 2. And then what we did is we actually got this one incorrect. All right, so we've set this, okay, 2. So we actually dropped down to 0.7. We got that one incorrect, so the correct count is 0. So then we've gone back up to 0.8. So we've gone up that step size, and then we've gone again. So we've got the first one correct. We've got the second one at 0.8 correct, and so therefore we've dropped down again. So I think this has worked. All right. So what we're going to do now is we will increase the number of trials just to see if it does work. So we'll go back up here. We'll go up to the number of trials, and we'll set the trials to say 50. Okay. Or we'll just get a random. We'll just randomize between correct and incorrect. All right. Do I have anything in that folder? Did I just delete that folder again? I'm an idiot. Sandbox, please. All right. It's not a method as limits, I know that. 0401. Okay, so we've got a nice long list there. Let's start. Let's start getting some wrong. So you see we're coming back up again. We'll start getting them right. 1, 2, right. So this should hopefully drop down now. I can't hear that. I can start to hear that now. The task is too easy, so that's why we're going down to 0. So a feature of a lot of these tasks is to compare 2 conditions. So in our case, we're going to do thresholds in noise, okay? So we're going to have some background noise playing, and we're going to look at our thresholds for tone detection in noise. The other thing that you would look for is something like, I'm just randomly pushing the buttons now, is look for the effects of the cue tone. So if you give the subject some prior warning, hey, we're looking for this particular tone. And so you'll compare the two conditions. So there we go, we've just done 50 trials. Let's have a look to see what the output was. So here is our file. So we've got 3 incorrect there. So let's have a look. I'll make that a bit smaller again. So 0, 1. So sorry, 1, 1, 2. Since that's a 2, that should drop down. They got it correct, should stay the same, yep. And that should go up. They got that correct twice, it should go down. It did. 1, 2 should go down, yep. 1, so I'm looking at these 2 columns here. 1, 2 should go down. 1, 2 should go down, yep. 1, 2 should go down, yep. 1, yep. So we'll try it again. I've purposely made it wrong. So the current correct count is 0, so we've shot back up again. Current correct count is 0, so we shot back up again because we've got it wrong, wrong, wrong. And then what happened? We got to 0.7, and then since that's incorrect, we then went up to 0.8. We got it correct, so then we've reset the counter. It's gone to 0.8 again. We've got it correct, so that's 2 now. So then we've dropped back down by that step size. 1, 2 down. 1, 2 down. 1, 2 down. Great. And what we've got here is basically 0. Okay. So, and then we've just got some random stuff here as well. So it looks like it's worked. Let's see if so we'll delete that. We'll get the trial number like this. I'll hit Control-C. And what we're going to do is we're just going to pop this into Prism, which is a computer program that I use to just get a very quick overview of the data. GraphPad Prism. So what we're going to do is going to have a new XWAL file. Okay, so in the X-axis we're going to have the trial number, and in the Y-axis we're going to have the intensity. You'll notice I deleted that. Oops. You notice I deleted that first row because that's our initialization row. We'll paste this. We'll see what we get. There we go. That looks like a bit of a staircase method, doesn't it? Double click on that. We'll make these a bit smaller. We'll show a connecting line. There we go. 2 correct down, 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 2 correct down. Incorrect, 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 incorrect. 2 correct down, 2 correct down, 2 correct down, 2 correct down, 2 correct down. And then you can see we're sort of hovering around here and we're coming back up again. All right, this looks very similar to let's have a look here, to the sort of function that we have with our staircase method that we're trying to get to. Okay, here. All right, what we can do in the next video is we can start to calculate the reversals. Okay, and we're going to use those reversals to then get the threshold estimation. All right, so we'll leave this video here. We've now got the ability to control the stimulus intensity, as well as we're starting to plot our staircase or our threshold estimation. I want to finish this video by saying the task is too easy at the moment. We're going to have to now introduce, or in the future think about introducing some difficulty in the task, right? Because as you can see, we're going to 0% output of our sound card here. So in the future, we're going to think about making some noise or introducing some noise into the system, some background noise, and testing masked thresholds. Until then, give this a shot, the program, and I'll see you in the next video.